You were not born with a number in your name or a dollar sign stamped on your soul. You were born whole, infinite, woven from the same fabric that births galaxies. And yet somewhere between your first breath and your first bill you were convinced that your worth could be measured, counted, taxed, traded, bought and sold like a product on a shelf in a world that forgot what sacred meant. Before you could speak, you were taught a language that reduced the soul to spreadsheets. You were handed an invisible contract that read, struggle equals virtue, debt equals duty, money equals survival. And silently, unconsciously, you agreed. You agreed not with your voice, but with your nervous system. You agreed every time you watched your parents fight over bills, every time joy had to wait until payday, every time the thing your heart wanted was dismissed with 4 words, we can't afford it. And so you learned. You learned to dim your desires, to contract your breathing, to perform worthiness for systems that never saw you. You internalized a lie so old and so embedded in the collective field that it became reality. That money is hard. That wealth is for others. That having more makes you less. But what if none of it was ever true? What if the real illusion wasn't poverty, but perception? What if money at its core is not a thing, not an object, not a finish line? What if it's a frequency, an echo of belief, an expression of vibration, a mirror held up to the most intimate, most unspoken truth about who you believe you are? What if your entire financial life isn't about numbers at all, but about energy? This isn't fantasy. This is spiritual physics, ancient law, hidden wisdom you once knew before the world convinced you to forget. You see, there's a current running beneath everything you've been taught, a deeper system, and the currency it runs on is not dollars. It is resonance, alignment, embodiment, presence. Money is energy. It is alive. It is intelligent. It is reactive not to your effort, but to your essence. Not to your hours, but to your frequency. It doesn't follow the rules of logic. It follows the laws of flow. This is why some grind endlessly and stay broke, while others move with ease and receive in overflow. It's not luck. It's not hustle. It's not strategy. It's coherence. But here's the catch. Your body cannot lie. And the truth is, most people don't feel safe to receive. They don't feel safe to hold more. They say they want abundance, but their nervous system has been trained to expect collapse. Their subconscious is still bracing for the next emergency. Their breath still catches when the bill arrives. And so the current constricts, not because they are unworthy, but because their field is coded with fear. Not conscious fear, somatic fear, the kind that lives in the body, not the story. The kind that says, more means danger, receiving means risk, ease means I'll be punished. This is the spell, the real one, not cast with potions, but with repetition, with silence, with the sigh of a mother counting coins at the register, with the tight smile of a father pretending everything's fine, with the voice in your head that still whispers, don't get your hopes up. But hope is not the problem. Amnesia is. You've forgotten who you are, forgotten that money does not come from effort. It comes from alignment, from remembrance, from reclaiming the truth that you are the source, no, a seeker, not a beggar, not a victim of an economic weather report, but the generator, the field, the current. You are not meant to chase wealth. You are meant to become it, to embody the frequency of safety so deeply, so unapologetically, that money flows to you like water to a riverbed, inevitable, natural, sacred. But to do that, you must unlearn the old spells. You must walk back into the wound, the original fracture, the moment you first believed that you had to earn your right to exist. That worth was something given by external systems rather than something you were born with. And you must reclaim it, not with rage, not with revenge, but with reverence. You must remember that you are not here to survive. You are here to flow, to expand, to receive without shame, to give without depletion, to circulate abundance like breath, like blood, like prayer. Because when you down, you drop into the truth beneath the programming, the field responds instantly. You stop pushing. You stop chasing. You stop bargaining with a universe that was never withholding from you. You begin to see the signs, the unexpected check, the cancellation that spares your energy, the stranger's kindness that opens your day like a flower. You begin to recognize money not as reward, but as reflection. Not as a destination, but as a consequence of who you're being, of what you're embodying, of how much safety your system can hold in the presence of more. And that's where the real wealth begins. Not in the digits, but in the field of remembrance, the field of now, the field you forgot you were shaping with every breath. So take one now. Inhale not just air, but possibility. Exhale not just tension, but programming. And prepare yourself, because the current is waking, and it's listening, not to your words, but to your resonance. And you are about to remember what they never wanted you to know. That money is not the power. You are. Look closer, not with your eyes, but with your inner sight. The world you move through each day, its banks, its jobs, its price tags, its taxes, not the true world. It is a construct, a manufactured theater, a finely tuned spell, not cast by sorcerers in robes, but by institutions in suits, not etched in grimoires, but printed in textbooks, commercials, sermons, and generational scripts passed down like sacred law. They told you, money doesn't grow on trees. They told you, life is hard, work is noble, sacrifice is love. They told you, save your pennies, be responsible, don't expect too much. They told you these things not to protect you, but to train you, to mold your frequency into a predictable shape, a shape they could manage, a shape that obeys, a shape that stays small. And it worked. It worked because you trusted them. You absorbed the vibration of fear before you could even form the word abundance. You inherited their limitation like old furniture, heavy, outdated, and familiar. You were taught to conflate virtue with struggle, to equate suffering with goodness, to believe that money is earned only through effort, through the grinding down of your spirit. But let me ask you this, who does that belief serve? Does it liberate you? Does it expand you? Or does it keep you on the treadmill, always chasing, never arriving? Because make no mistake, the world was not built on truth, it was built on belief. And belief, when repeated often enough, becomes law in the nervous system. This is the true economy, not dollars, but conviction. The man who believes he must earn love will chase it forever. The woman who believes she must shrink to receive will starve in silence. And the soul who believes money is dangerous will sabotage its own expansion the moment it gets too close. Not because of weakness, but because of programming. We've all been programmed, not just mentally, but emotionally, somatically, energetically. Your entire financial blueprint was formed not through logic, but through repetition, through moments so subtle you barely noticed. The withheld birthday gift, the look in your mother's eyes when the card declined, the guilt that dripped from your father's voice when he said, maybe next time. You think money is about numbers? It's about memory, stored in the tissue, buried in the breath, haunting your present with echoes of a past you never chose. And that's the cruel brilliance of the spell. It makes you think the issue is out there, the job, the bills, the economy. But the real prison is internal. You've been trained to self-regulate into scarcity, to flinch at opportunity, to downplay your desires, to apologize for wanting more. And that inner posture, that energetic recoil is what repels the very thing you seek. Because money doesn't follow need. It follows resonance. And resonance doesn't come from begging. It comes from being. But what are you being when your system is still braced for collapse? When your nervous system still believes that too much joy will be punished? You can't fake abundance. You must feel it, embody it. Become the shape that wealth feels safe to enter. Otherwise, it bounces off of you. Not because you're broken, but because you've built a field that whispers not yet, not ready, not allowed. This is not judgment. This is physics. The field does not lie, and neither does your breath. Check it now. Go ahead. Breathe in the word money. Do you feel openness? Or does something contract? That's the spell, and the only way out is through the tension, through the lie, through the layers of belief inherited from generations who learned to survive instead of thrive. People who were taught that asking for more is selfish, that pleasure is sinful, that rest is laziness. These are not truths. They are energetic leashes, unseen, but felt, passed down not as stories, but as states of being. States you now carry like invisible weights in your aura, wondering why the flow won't come, why the effort never seems to be enough. But the answer isn't in doing more. It's in remembering more. Because money is not attracted to performance. It is drawn to authenticity, to coherence, to the quiet, undeniable frequency of a being who remembers, I am already enough. I do not chase currency. I generate it. I do not prove my value. I anchor it. I do not perform for approval, I radiate from truth. This is the alchemy the world never taught you. Not budgeting, not investing, not earning, but becoming. Becoming a vessel that can hold the current without leaking. A channel so safe, so open, so stabilized that money stops being a stranger and starts becoming a friend. But first, you must disobey. Disobey the story, the one that told you money is outside of you, that you must trade your life force to touch it, that you must lose yourself to gain security. This is not security. This is soul debt. And it's time to forgive yourself for ever buying in. You didn't know. How could you? You were born into a system that trains children to obey bells, to raise hands to speak, to ask permission to rest, and then punishes them for not becoming entrepreneurs of joy. But now you see it, the gears behind the curtain, the illusion of effort as the pathway to peace. It's a trick. The real path is not upward, it's inward. And when you go there, when you begin to rewire the nervous system, to speak safety into your cells, to dissolve the inherited shame of wanting more, something changes. Not just in your bank account, in your breath, in your posture, in your field. And from that, shift money begins to move. Not because you earned it, but because you remembered how to receive. So then, if money is not what they taught you, if it is not a paycheck, a prize, a product, what is it? Strip away its symbols, its paper, its digits. Remove the ink, the signatures, the coins, the metal. What remains? Not a thing, not a substance, but a movement. A rhythm, a current, not unlike water, not unlike breath. Money is not a thing to hold, it is a force to flow with. It is not wealth you seek, it is circulation. It is not control you crave, it is coherence. Because money, like all forms of energy, obeys a single law. Movement sustains life. Stagnation is death. That's why hoarded money decays the field. It does not sit quietly, it rots energetically. Not because saving is wrong, but because fear poisons the current. You see, money does not respond to digits, it responds to frequency, and frequency cannot be faked. You can pretend with your face, with your words, with your vision board, but your field, the unseen field that surrounds you like an energetic skin, tells the truth. Always. And what does your field say when you spend? Does it whisper trust? Or does it scream danger? What does it say when money arrives? Does it expand with yes, or contract with what if it disappears again? You may not hear these thoughts, but your nervous system does. Your breath knows. Your muscles know. And that knowing shapes your relationship with money far more than strategy ever could. Because strategy is linear, but wealth is spiral. It moves in cycles, in seasons, in waves. And like the moon, it cannot be demanded. It must be aligned with. And alignment, beloved, begins in the body. Not in spreadsheets, not in mantras, but in the breath. Because before you could name money, you were already learning how to relate to it. In your mother's tone, in your father's silence, in the energy of the room when the bills arrived. You felt the charge. You absorbed the tension. You learned without words that money equals pressure, that having it means stress, that losing it means shame. And your body, in its innocence, formed a contract. Wealth is unsafe. And you've been honoring that contract ever since. Not by choice, but by vibration. You undercharge, not because you're generous, but because you fear rejection. You overspend not because you're careless, but because money feels like it burns in your hands. You hold your breath when you receive a no because you're ungrateful, but because your system never learned how to feel safe with more. But now the contract is visible. Now the code is revealed. And here is the truth that shatters it. Money is not external. It is an extension of you. Your energy made visible, your belief made tangible, your inner architecture reflected in the mirror of form. And once you know this, truly know this, you stop trying to manipulate money. You start tending to the field, to the root, because the fruit does not grow from effort, it grows from soil. And your soil is your consciousness, your beliefs, your assumptions, your embodied identity. You cannot trick the soil with plastic seeds. You must become the fertile ground in which wealth can root itself. And that means safety, not surface safety, the kind you post about, the kind you perform, but cellular safety. The kind you feel in your gut when a bill comes in and your breath stays steady. The kind you feel in your chest when you raise your prices and your heart does not race. The kind you feel in your spine when you say, "I receive," and your body doesn't flinch. This is the true wealth. Not numbers, not digits, but the capacity to hold life without constriction. To say yes to more without the echo of, "But what if it's taken away?" Because money is like breath. It is meant to move. It is meant to enter and exit, to rise and fall, to nourish and return. But the world trained you to hold your breath, to grip, to hoard, to panic at the exhale. And in doing so, it created a circuit of fear, a body that does not trust flow, a field that mistrusts abundance. But nowhere you begin to unwind the grip, to remember the truth that predates the lie, the truth that money is not earned. It is expressed. It is not a reward for suffering. It is a response to coherence. The coherent being is magnetic not because they chase, but because they are. They do not ask for money. They embody wealth. They radiate sufficiency. Not because they have more, but because they remember who they are without it. And that remembrance changes everything, because now the current flows differently, not as a chase, not as a grind, but as a reflection. And in this reflection, you see it clearly. Money was never the goal. It was the feedback, the mirror, the echo of your field. And now, that field is changing. Now, you are beginning to flow. We speak of money as if it lives in banks, in screens, in wallets. But the truth is, money lives in the body, in the breath, in the spine, in the silent contractions you've never questioned. The body is not separate from your financial reality. It is your financial reality. Because long before you were taught what money is, you were taught how to feel about it. And that feeling didn't arrive through lessons. It arrived through experience, through sensation, through nervous system conditioning. This is what most teachings miss. They teach manifestation like math. They teach wealth like strategy. But the field does not respond to formulas, it responds to coherence. And coherence lives in the body. So let me ask you, when you speak the word money, what does your body do? Do your shoulders rise? Does your stomach knot? Do your fists clench just slightly? Or maybe your breath pauses, not enough to notice in conversation, but just enough to disrupt the flow. These are not flaws. These are codes, somatic codes, written into your nervous system through repetition and emotion. Because every time your parents fought over finances, every time joy was postponed until payday, every time a dream was deferred with the words "we can't afford it," a message was imprinted. Money is danger. Receiving is risk. Having more means losing more. And your body, in its divine wisdom, responded. It adapted. It learned to shrink in the presence of wealth. It learned to fear the exhale. It learned to equate expansion with collapse. Not because you are broken, because you are brilliantly wired for survival. But survival is not the same as wealth. Safety is not the same as freedom. You were wired for survival in a world that punished expansion. And now you wonder why abundance feels foreign. You wonder why you can't hold on to money, or why you reject opportunities that are too good to be true. You wonder why you self-sabotage the moment overflow arrives. And the answer is simple. Your body doesn't feel safe to hold more, because holding more used to mean more pressure, more responsibility, more visibility, more potential for loss. So even when you say you want more, your system braces, contracts, defends. Not because you lack willpower, because you lack nervous system permission. And until that changes, nothing outside will. Because money does not flow to intention, it flows to capacity. The capacity to receive without flinching. The capacity to expand without collapse. The capacity to hold without leaking, without dimming, without abandoning yourself. And that capacity is built, not with affirmations, not with hustle, but with regulation, with breath, with slowness, with the sacred reparenting of your inner field. You must teach yourself what no one taught you. That wealth is not a threat. That overflow is not betrayal. That joy is not a setup for pain, because the nervous system cannot be fooled. It is ancient. It is primal. It doesn't respond to your goals. It responds to your felt sense of safety. If wealth feels like a threat, your body will reject it. It will burn it, misplace it, sabotage it, or manifest crisis the moment it arrives. Not out of failure, out of protection. This is why people lose it all so quickly after a breakthrough. They weren't cursed. They were unprepared. Not in knowledge, in nervous system stability. Wealth poured into a dysregulated body is like water into a cracked vessel. It leaks. It breaks. It floods places that aren't ready to receive. So what's the answer? You build the vessel. You teach the body that money is safe. Not by force, by familiarity. By bringing presence to the places that still clench. By breathing into the patterns that still brace. By noticing without judgment when your energy contracts at the thought of receiving more. This is not mindset work. This is spiritual somatics. It is reclamation at the level of cells, of breath, of pulse. You don't clear blocks with willpower. You dissolve resistance with love. Love that says, you don't have to rush. Love that says, you are not too much. Love that says, you are allowed to rest and still receive. Because here is what they never taught you. When the body feels safe, the field opens. And when the field opens, money moves. Not because you proved yourself, but because you stopped bracing against the very thing you asked for. This is why the old approach grind, hustle, strategy no longer works for you. You are no longer aligned with force. You are here to receive through resonance. To open, not to push. To soften, not to chase. And that begins inside. With the breath, with the body, with the subtle shift from performance to presence. Because presence is the truest magnetism. And you, exactly as you are, breathing deeply in this moment, are already enough to hold more. The work is not in becoming worthy. It is in remembering you always were, and allowing your body to believe it. Let me introduce you to a man named Caleb. He is not a metaphor. He is not a theory. He is not a guru on a stage or a name printed on book covers. He is the man fixing your boiler, the one hauling crates at dawn, the one people call when things break, when emergencies rise, when there's no one else who will show up at midnight with hands that know how to heal the mechanical world. Caleb is 51. He has been self-employed for over 2 decades. He has no marketing funnel, no financial advisor, no team. What he has is muscle, reliability, and a heart that doesn't know how to say no. He is beloved in his town, quiet, steady, dependable. And beneath his skin, beneath the calluses and the stoic smile, lives a story few ever hear. Because Caleb, though he would never say it aloud, is tired. Not tired like needing sleep. Tired in the soul, tired in the bones. Tired in that ancient way that comes from pouring yourself out for years from a cup that was never full. Caleb doesn't have a money problem. He has a capacity problem. He gives more than he receives, charges less than he's worth, works longer hours than his body can sustain. And every time he gets ahead, every time there's a little extra something happens, a transmission dies, the water heater bursts, a payment gets delayed, and suddenly he's back to zero, back to scraping, back to solving everyone else's chaos while silently drowning in his own. From the outside, people call it bad luck, but it's not luck. It's a loop. It's an energetic circuit that always brings him back to lack, because somewhere deep in his wiring, there's a rule he never meant to install. If I ask for more, I will be rejected. If I rise too far, I will fall harder. If I stop struggling, I won't be needed. And so Caleb struggles, faithfully, consistently, sacrificially, not because he wants to, because struggle is the only identity that still feels safe. He was raised by men who wore suffering like a badge, fathers who never rested, grandfathers who equated silence with strength. They didn't say it out loud, but the message was clear. Be humble. Don't ask for too much. Real men give until there's nothing left. And so he did, and still does. He lowers his rates to help out, says yes when his body screams no, convinces himself this is what good people do. But underneath the generosity is grief. Grief for the life he doesn't believe he's allowed to live. Grief for the version of him who once dreamed of freedom, of peace, of waking up without a cloud of financial dread pressing against his chest. But that version feels unreachable now. Too expensive, too audacious, too dangerous. Because to become him, the free one, the abundant one, Caleb would have to violate every rule he was taught to obey. He'd have to risk being called selfish, greedy, too full of himself. And that feels worse than poverty. That feels like exile. And so the cycle continues. He doesn't advertise because he doesn't want to outshine. He doesn't raise prices because he fears becoming the villain in someone else's story. He doesn't invest in himself because he's still waiting for permission to feel worthy. But here's the truth. Caleb isn't stuck because of money. He's stuck because of loyalty to old code. Code that says suffering is safe. Code that says sacrifice is the path to love. Code that says abundance will make him unrecognizable to the people he loves most. And that code is a lie, but a lie wrapped in devotion. A lie passed down like a family heirloom. A lie that lives in many. Not just Caleb, maybe in you, maybe in your father, maybe in your grandmother who pinched pennies while feeding everyone else. This is not just one man's story. It is a field, a lineage, a soul contract that ends the moment someone sees it clearly and says, no more. No more shrinking for safety. No more betraying self for approval. No more confusing exhaustion with virtue. Caleb is not broken. He is simply following instructions he never chose. And the moment he sees the pattern not just mentally, but somatically, it begins to unravel. Because survival scripts lose power in the light of awareness. And when that light touches the nervous system, when the breath begins to move freely again, money stops being a battleground. It becomes feedback. It becomes mirror. It becomes teacher. And the first lesson it teaches is this: the world does not pay you for your pain. It reflects the frequency you embody. And Caleb, like so many others, is not here to be chosen. He is here to choose himself, to choose ease, to choose the terrifying liberation of receiving without guilt. And when he does, when he finally breaks the pattern, not through force, but through softness, the field around him will shift. Because the field always follows the frequency, and the frequency always begins inside. There are laws more ancient than your government, older than your currency. Laws that were not written in books, but etched into the fabric of reality. Laws that do not care about your hustle, your grind, your spreadsheets. Laws that respond only to resonance, only to coherence, only to truth. You've been told money follows action, that if you do enough, strive enough, sacrifice enough, the reward will arrive. But money does not follow action. It follows alignment. And alignment is not something you force. It is something you remember. Because here is the secret buried beneath every financial system, every myth of meritocracy, every illusion of scarcity. Your outer world is a projection, not a fixed landscape, but a mirror of your inner field, a reflection of your assumptions. And money, like any part of the mirror, only reflects what you believe you are allowed to hold. This is not philosophy. This is law, the hermetic law of correspondence. As within, so without. As above, so below. The law of assumption. What you persist in feeling as true must become form. The law of mental equivalence. Your external life is a replica of the inner image you sustain. These are not suggestions. They are structure, the architecture behind everything. And they all speak one truth in unison. You are not waiting for money. Money is waiting for you. Waiting for you to stop chasing, to stop performing, to stop begging for crumbs from a universe that only ever mirrors what you broadcast. Money responds to identity, not desire. And your identity is the frequency you live from, the state you hold, habitually, even when no one is looking. You can speak abundance all day, but if your nervous system is tuned to lack, the field listens to the signal, not the story. You can visualize millions, but if you still feel like the one who must earn their right to exist, money will not stay. Because coherence is not about performance. It's about congruence. The congruence between what you say and what you believe. Between what you want and what you embody. That is why the teachings of Neville Goddard remain seismic in their power. He didn't teach tips. He revealed truth. Not a law you try. A law you are. You do not get what you want, Neville said. You get what you are. And what are you? A frequency, a field, a current. Every assumption you hold creates a reality that must match it, not eventually, inevitably. Neville called it living in the end, not dreaming about your desires as if they live in the future, but embodying the felt sense of them already done. Not hope, buying, when you walk, speak, think, and breathe from the identity of the one who already holds the wealth, your field reorganizes itself to match that state. Not because you forced it, but because it cannot not. Because the mirror cannot contradict the source. It is law. So why don't more people live this way? Because they were trained to worship delay, to love the grind more than the goal, to see waiting as virtue and suffering as purification. But this is a distortion, a manipulation, a distortion so deep it made you mistrust the present moment. It made you delay embodiment, delay abundance, delay the very thing you came here to experience, by believing you had to earn it through pain. But you are not here to earn. You are here to remember. And remember this: when you assume the state of abundancy not in fantasy, but in being, your world bends, time folds, synchronicities spark, people appear, resources arrive, not as magic tricks, as reflections. Neville taught this, but another voice built the scaffolding beneath it. Ernest Holmes, a mystic of structure, a master of the invisible. He taught that the mind is not just a receiver, but a projector, that there is a universal Mindan infinite intelligence that receives every thought, every belief, every assumption as instruction, and it obeys, instantly, without judgment, without delay except the delay of your own contradiction. He called this the law of mind in action. It cannot discriminate between thoughts you mean and thoughts you fear. It does not know sarcasm or hesitation. It knows vibration. It echoes back what you most persistently believe, whether that belief serves you or not. That's why Holmes introduced the idea of the mental equivalent. He taught that you cannot receive anything in form that you do not first create in consciousness. If you want to receive greater wealth, you must become its mental and emotional equivalent. Not wish for it. Hold it. Live from it. Build a self-image that is no longer tethered to survival, guilt, or apology. And then, only then, will the outer world have no choice but to comply. Because the outer is the echo, and you, always and only, are the voice. This is not positive thinking. This is energetic authorship. You write the field with your frequency. You code the current with your coherence. And when you forget this, the world becomes loud with lack. But when you remember truly, in your cells, you become the kind of person who shifts rooms by simply entering them. Not because of what you say, because of what you carry, because of what you are. You've been taught to build dams, to hold, to grip, to save against collapse. But money, like water, does not respond to hoarding. It responds to trust, to openness, to circulation. The word currency comes from curreretto run, to flow, to move like a river. Money was never meant to sit idle in fear. It was meant to move, to dance, to bliss, to nourish. But you were taught to clutch it like air in a drowning world. You were taught that letting go means never seeing it again. That if you don't hold tight, it will vanish. That if you don't plan for every drop, you'll wake up in ruin. But this belief is not safety. It is suffocation. Imagine if your lungs behaved that way, inhaling with panic and refusing to exhale. You would collapse. And this is what has happened to so many. Collapsed nervous systems, frozen financial fields. Not because of laziness, but because of fear coded as responsibility. You were taught to save from scarcity, to budget from bracing, to give with strings attached. But money is not an object, it is a current. And the current does not respond to control. It responds to coherence. The difference is subtle but seismic. Control says, I must manage this or it will disappear. Coherence says, I am the field through which this naturally flows. Control hoards. Coherence holds. Control tightens. Coherence opens. One creates pressure. The other creates presence. You were not born to be a controller of flow. You were born to become the flow. To allow money to come and go through you like wind through trees moving, circling, returning always in motion, never in fear. But to do that, you must release the old rituals, the grind, the overgiving, the constant chasing masked as ambition. You must begin to notice, where am I forcing? Where am I clenching? Where am I moving from fear? Because money doesn't come to those who chase. Chasing is a declaration of distance. It says, I believe it's not here. But money flows to presence, to trust, to the field that already knows it is enough. You've seen this. You felt it. The person who walks into a room with no desperation, no performance, just ease, just calm, just being that person bends reality. Not because they try, because they are. They have become the frequency. And frequency is the only invitation the universe ever answers. Because the field doesn't hear words. It hears vibration. It hears how you spend. Do you spend like someone who trusts the tide? Or like someone afraid this is the last breath? It hears how you give. Do you give from overflow or obligation? It hears how you receive. Do you say yes and let it land? Or do you shrink, apologize, deflect? Every moment, the current is listening. Every transaction is a conversation with the field. And the field is not judging. It is mirroring. It is echoing back the state you hold most often. So if you want more, don't ask. Align, return to stillness, to softness, to the breath that flows without fear. Because the moment you stop gripping, the moment you soften your gaze and unclench your jaw, something shifts. Not in the economy. In your field, the dam begins to break. Not with force, but with remembering. You are not here to catch the current. You are the current. You are the rhythm that wealth recognizes. You are the ocean that money wants to return to. So breathe like it, move like it, spend like it, give like it, receive like it. Because the truth is, the world has never been responding to your effort. It has only ever been responding to your state. This was never about money. Not really. It was about remembering. Remembering the part of you that existed before measurement, before metrics, before the mirage of more. The part that was still present, whole-rich in a way the world never taught you to name. You were never meant to prove your worth through labor. You were meant to live it, to breathe it, to let it move through your spine like electricity and speak through your presence like music remembered from a dream. But somewhere, the world taught you to forget, to chase instead of choose, to bargain for breadcrumbs instead of claim your seat at the feast. They told you wealth was earned, but you are not here to earn. You are here to embody. Because wealth is not a number, it is a state, a rhythm, a remembrance. And when you remember, you stop reaching, you stop performing, you stop outsourcing your sovereignty to systems built on your amnesia, and you begin to emit, not arrogance, resonance. The resonance of someone who no longer begs the mirror to change because they have become the source that shifts the reflection. This is what it means to reclaim, to stand in the holy center of your field and know, I am the frequency, I am the current, I am the portal through which wealth moves because I have made myself safe to hold it. When you become that safe place, when your breath no longer contracts in the presence of more, the universe does not hesitate. It meets you, it pours into you, because it finally trusts you to keep the flow moving, not hoarded, not clutched, not feared, but honored, circulated, returned. And this isn't the end, it's the beginning. A new field, coded with choice, a new life, animated by remembrance. You do not walk away from this video the same, because now you know, now you've seen it, felt it, and now you are asked only one thing: live from it. Live from the frequency of wealth, not as something you seek, but something you are. And as you do, the world will reflect back that truth, over and over, in ways so beautiful, so unexpected, that you'll wonder how you ever believed the old story. This is your return, not to effort, not to striving, but to self, to source, to the original field before the spell was cast. You are no longer the seeker. You are the mirror, the magnet, the embodiment of a wealth that cannot be taxed, timed, or taken, because it does not come from outside of you. It never did. You are the current now. Let it move. Let it dance. Let it bless all it touches. And if this transmission stirred something deep within something ancient and unnamed, I invite you to speak it. Share your reflections, your realizations, your awakenings in the comments below. This is not just a video, it is a remembering, a reweaving, and your voice completes the field. If this path speaks to your soul, if it aligns with the part of you that has always known there is more beneath the surface like this video, subscribe to the channel and continue walking with us on the path to the unknown. Because here, we don't just explore content, we initiate remembrance. And before you go, sit with this. What if everything you were taught about money was designed to make you forget who you are? Let that question echo. Let it reshape the way you move. Let it ripple through the current of your life until the only thing left is truth. And in that truth, receive.